Om Bhadram Karnebhi Sunayama Devaah Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraah Sthirairange Stushtuvam Sastanubhihi Vyasema Devahidam Yadayuh Sustina Indro Vruddhasavaah Sustina Pusha Vishwavedaah Sustina Starkshu Varishtanemi Sustino Brihaspadir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Almighty Lord, may we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we, while offering our praise to God, with our bodies strong of limbs, enjoy the life which God has pleased to grant us. Om peace, peace, peace. We were dealing with this 32nd verse of the 3rd chapter of the Mandukya Upanishad last time. The verse is this, I think I just introduced the verse. Atma Satyanubodhena na sankalpayade yada amanastam tada yati grahya bhave tadagraham. This is the verse. The prose order will be something like this. Atma Satyanubodhena yada na sankalpayade tada amanastam yati grahya bhave tat agraham. Now, in the previous verses, it was clearly shown that we pursue plurality or duality only so long as mind, emotions, feelings, tendencies are very active within us. The moment we transcend, we go beyond the mind. When we go beyond the mental vibrations, we become calm, we become quiet. Then mind will cease to be mind. Mind becomes non-mind. In fact, this experience is the implication of this particular word. Amanaska means the state of being non-mind. Mind will cease to be mind. As I said earlier, mind is nothing but a constant flow of thought currents, varieties of thought currents. Thought currents built upon our previous experiences, which have registered the tendencies in our mind. Perhaps these tendencies may not necessarily belong to this life experiences. We may have accumulated many tendencies, according to Vedanta, in previous life. So that's why sometimes we feel a natural tendency to do things in a given manner, to talk, to behave, and to act in a particular manner. You find the same family, 5 children growing up in the same family, maybe educated in the same school, belonging to the same parentage, will have 5 different tendencies. So the Vedanta tells each one is an individual soul who has brought with him a set of tendencies, impressions, what we call vasanas and vrittis, which make them behave in a given manner. There is no way, there is no other way. So these tendencies force us to behave in a particular manner. Now, these tendencies normally belong to 2 categories, the positive and negative. Those tendencies which may be helpful in leading a spiritual life or a moral life, or to do things in a proper manner, and their opposite tendencies. So there is always a conflict. So this conflict is due to these conflicting tendencies. The moment we become interested in spiritual life, And the moment we succeed in enriching the positive tendencies by mentally becoming acquainted with good tendencies, it may be by meditating, by prayer, by listening to good ideas, whatever may be, any positive action will have a positive effect on our mind. That becomes an asset, and that will help us to strongly entrenched in positive tendencies, which will be helpful to our spiritual life. Now, in Vedantic tradition, we have to go beyond both these tendencies, negative and also positive tendencies. First, we reinforce our mind with positive tendencies, and then we fill our mind with spiritual vibrations, spiritual characteristics, tendencies and characteristics which are conducive to spiritual life. And then we listen, what is called Sravanam. Then we contemplate on what we listen, called Mananam. And we get established in the spiritual ideas. And then we practice spiritual sadhanas, we continue spiritual practices. And this way, we go beyond the mind. Then mind is perceived for what it is. Mind is a fleeting phenomenon, just a continuous flow of thought currents. Once that is perceived, then mind will cease to be mind. And when mind ceases to be mind, it becomes one with Atman. This is called Amani Bhava in Vedantic tradition, means mind becoming non-mind. So long as mind is mind, it will pull our senses towards external objects. It will give us miseries, it will give us happiness and also unhappiness. It makes us miserable, it will make us anxious as to what is going to happen to our deeds, our activities, anxieties, complaints, problems, worries. All these are inevitable so long as we live at mental level. Because so long as we live at mental level, we identify ourselves with our mind. And the moment we go beyond mind, we identify ourselves with the supreme reality which is beyond mind, that is Atman. Then mind will cease to be mind. As I said earlier, mind is defined in Vedanta as Sankalpa, Vikalpatmika, Antakarana Vrittihi. Mind is nothing but just a continuous flow of tendencies, impressions, which may be in the form of certain speculations and also certain counter speculations. So this idea was explained in the 34th verse. In the I think maybe in the 31st verse. In the 32nd verse, the author explains how we go beyond mind. And he uses the word Atma Satyanubodhena. By constant contemplation on our true nature, which is Atma. See, we are what we imagine ourselves to be. That you can find from our daily experience. We are what we imagine ourselves to be. That's a psychological fact. You often find auto-suggestion. Sometimes when we feel depressed, if you go on repeating, well, I'm strong, I'm active, I can achieve things. Sometimes, mind becomes active, mind becomes vigorous, mind is invigorated. So very often we are what we consider ourselves to be, or we are what we identify ourselves to be. This is the reality. If we identify ourselves with our mind, if we think we are nothing but our mind, then we will be in perpetual misery. We will be anxious all the time. We will be happy for some time. Then we will be unhappy, because happiness is invariably associated with unhappiness. Happiness itself is a state of mental condition. And when that condition changes, it is nothing but a state of unhappiness. So, to go beyond unhappiness, there is only one way: to stop seeking happiness. And when we go beyond happiness and unhappiness, we reach our true identity, Atman. Because Atman is beyond both happiness and also unhappiness. Atman is above everything. It is a transcendental reality. Now, when we realize this truth, that we are this Atman, this self, then we attain the state of not being the mind. And then we become a non-actor. We can be a witness and not a participant of the drama that we call human life. So long as we are a participant, we identify ourselves as a participant in this drama of life. We suffer, we seek happiness, and everyone who seeks happiness will have to experience unhappiness, for the simple reason that happiness can never be a permanent state of existence. Happiness can never be a permanent state of existence. So if anybody wants happiness, the first thing he should do is he should stop seeking. So he should stop seeking happiness. Then only he can be happy. Because if you stop seeking happiness, you can never be unhappy. So long as we perpetually seek happiness, unhappiness is inevitable. The moment we stop seeking happiness, then there will be no unhappiness, because we realize that our true nature is beyond both happiness and also unhappiness. So there will be no unhappiness. So then we can witness this drama of our own life as a subject, as a witness, as a non-participant. And then what happens? We stop identifying ourselves with external objects. This idea is stated here. So, amanastam tadayati, grahya abhave tadagraham. Grahya means objects that we pursue. Grahyam actually means objects which objects that we normally pursue with our mind and the five senses of perception. So, objectified knowledge is the result of perceiving things with the mind and five senses of perception. With the eyes and mind, we see things. With ears and mind, we hear things. And then we identify ourselves with those objects. So the moment these objects cease to exist, then we will cease to be the experiencer of these objects. Because it is our identity, it is our identification with the experiencership that makes us happy or unhappy. So there will be no grahyam. Grahyam means there will be no external objects, because we may see things, we may experience things, but they won't leave their mark in our mind. We can look upon them as a witness, because we will realize that whatever we see at the external world is not in fact different from our own true self. We realize that we are that supreme reality, the immanent self, Atman, Antaryami, we call it, which is the immanent reality in all beings, and also it is the all-pervading, omnipresent reality existing everywhere. So that is this we have already explained earlier, but still I have just referred to this. This is the 32nd verse. Now we'll come to 33rd verse. This also we referred, but we had to deal with the 34th verse more elaborately. The 33rd one is this: agalpajamajam jnanam jnaya abhinnam prachakshati brahma jnayamajam nityam ajenajam vibudhyate. Now, this is a simple principle is explained here. Jnayam is not different from jnanam. The simple point is external things that we pursue are in reality not different from ourselves. It's a simple point. Because whatever we see the external world, in reality, are not different from our own true self. This idea will become clear as we progress further. I shall explain the status of the universe in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. That will make this point very clear. Now, in Vedantic tradition, the world is often explained as an illusion or illusory. Actually, there is a problem in language, a serious problem in language. The external world is actually not to be interpreted as illusory, because illusion always implies the experience of something somewhere where it doesn't exist. That's what we normally mean by illusion. See, optical illusion, people suffering from certain problems, he may see certain things where nothing exists. This is not what is meant by Maya or Mithya, and this is not a status of universe in Vedanta. It is a matter of misinterpretation. When we consider this world as the permanent reality, so long as we believe this world is an absolute reality, we can never go beyond the empirical. Now, what happens to a spiritually enlightened person when he realizes the Atman residing within him, and when he realizes that same Atman is the omnipresent or pervading reality? The world doesn't cease to exist, but the way he looks upon the world undergoes a radical change. The world as world doesn't cease to exist. I have to explain this again in the light of our famous analogy, rope-snake analogy. You have to think of the analogy again. A dark room where you see a piece of rope lying in front of you. Because of its shape and color and size, perhaps we may mistake that rope for a snake. In fact, it is a piece of rope. And we may mistake that rope for a stick, for a crack on the floor, or for a thin stream of light. These four examples are given in the classical Vedantic text. That is Sarpa, Danda, Bhutchidra, and Jaladhara. That is snake, a small piece of stick, a thin stream of water, or a crack on the floor, because there is not enough light. So a dark colored piece of rope may be mistaken for any of these things, or maybe for anything. Anything which resembles that, anything which that piece of object resembles can be superimposed on that object. When you bring light, you are not actually seeing a new object. Your misunderstanding that it's a piece of rope is now corrected as the correct understanding. Your misunderstanding that is a snake is now corrected as the correct understanding that it is a piece of rope. Because there was not enough light in the dark room, the semi-dark room, you mistook the piece of rope for a snake. Now, when you bring light, what happens? The snake doesn't go away anywhere. The snake doesn't vanish, for the simple reason that snake did not exist there. Your wrong notion that it was a snake is now corrected by the right notion that it is a rope. Similarly, when we realize the Advaitic truth that we are the Atman, the world doesn't go anywhere. It's a matter of reinterpretation. Due to wrong interpretation, in our ignorance, we thought this world is the eternal entity. So long as we look upon this world as eternal and everlasting, we can never think of anything beyond the empirical, beyond the world. Anybody who lives in this world, who thinks this world is the only thing that exists, will be busy making money, looking for external pleasures. So long as we believe the world alone is the only entity, then morality becomes very earthly. At a higher level, if you look upon God as the creator of this world, then you go in search of a transcendental origin of morality. God created this world, so we had to obey his laws and rules and regulations. So there you are looking for a transcendental authority as somebody who imposes moral discipline on humanity. But in Vedanta, morality is not sought at the transcendental level. Morality, the highest morality, is established on the basic principle that the world is one. The world that we mistake to be real is now experienced only to be the phenomenal experience of the transcendental reality. As I said earlier, when you bring light, the snake doesn't go away. In place of the snake, you realize it's a rope. The rope is not a new entity. Even if you don't bring light, the rope will be there. Even if you don't realize that we are Brahman, we are the Atman, we will be Atman. Or the fact that we are Atman, the fact that we are the Supreme Self, the Supreme Consciousness, doesn't depend upon our realizing that we are the Supreme Self. Even if we don't realize that we are the Atman, we will be Atman. So, when we realize the Supreme Truth, we realize the whole creation is one entity. And that is the basis of Advaitic morality. A person who believes in Vedanta cannot hurt anyone, cannot do injury to anyone, not because he is afraid of God, but because he believes that the whole creation is one. This Atman, this Supreme Consciousness, is prevalent everywhere. It is all-pervading, it is omnipresent, it is immanent. Therefore, hurting even a most insignificant creature in this world, we are spiritually hurting ourselves, because creation is one, existence is one. It doesn't rule out the possibility of a monotheistic creator God. Only it goes beyond it, that's all. Advaita doesn't rule out or negate any of the other ideas of popular religious philosophical traditions. But Advaita goes beyond it. Advaita says that creation is one, existence is one. And the moment we go beyond mind, the moment we realize that we are the Supreme Self, we realize that we are the same reality, the Atman is residing in all of us, and we also realize that the same Atman is omnipresent, it is all-pervading. Therefore, it becomes the highest moral philosophy. That's what is meant by here. See, and now in the 34th verse, you can find this idea further explained. So we have to remember these fundamental principles of Vedanta. That is, Vedanta believes that the supreme reality or Brahman is the basis of the world. In the absence of a piece of rope, you can never feel there is a snake. There should be an object in front of you. And that object is rope. Only you mistake that rope for the snake. Similarly, we mistake the all-pervading reality for this fleeting, empirical, phenomenal universe. Behind the phenomenal, empirical universe, there is the foundation, the essence of the reality, and that is Atman. That's the absolute reality. And the world in a way is not different from Brahman. Just like the snake is not different from rope. We have to think of the analogy. The snake is only a wrong perception that you entertain in your mind. What you call snake is in reality the rope. A subtle philosophical point you can find here. What we consider, what we mistakenly view and consider to be the snake, is in fact the rope. What we mistakenly consider to be the fleeting universe is in reality Brahman or Atman. So it is not different. So the snake is not different from the rope. The snake idea exists within us because we have seen a snake the previous day somewhere in the zoo or a forest. So that idea is superimposed upon this rope. Similarly, we see this world of plurality, the fleeting, changing external phenomena. So when we are identifying ourselves with this world, we can't see the eternal, the everlasting Atman behind. The moment we realize that supreme truth, the world doesn't disappear, but the world is now properly interpreted, perceived to be, in fact, Atman. It is a matter of correct judgment. It is not a new knowledge coming, but it's a matter of correct judgment. That's why I said earlier, even if we don't realize that we are Brahman, we are Brahman. The fact that we are Brahman, this is not dependent upon our realizing that we are Brahman. If it depends upon our realizing that we are Brahman, then it is only it depends upon something. Anything which is dependent upon something else cannot be eternally true. So that's why he said, in Vedanta, our realization of our true nature is self-discovery. It is not a new knowledge. It is not a new knowledge that we get. It is self-discovery, spiritual homecoming, rediscovering our true nature. That is the idea behind it. So, nigrihidasya manaso nirvikalpasya dhimataha prajara satuvijnaya susupte anyona tatsamaha. Here an objection is raised by a school of thought representing Nagarjuna's Shunyavada, or it's called a doctrine of emptiness, because during Gaudapada's time, Nagarjuna's school of doctrine of emptiness was very popular. It's called Shunyavada. So Madhyamika Karika was written almost 250 years before Gaudapada Karya. This particular book was written somewhere around 4th century AD. This was written about 250 years later. So some philosophers belonging to Nagarjuna school may ask the question, well, we experience the same thing in deep sleep. In deep sleep also, though not permanently, temporarily, we forget the empirical world. So you have to remember the fundamental ideas that we discussed at least 6-7 months back when we were dealing with the Upanishads, which is the original text of this interpretative work. We discuss, Mandukya Upanishad discusses the absolute reality on the basis of 3 experiences that we normally undergo in our daily life: waking state, dream state, and deep sleep state. Dreamless, deep sleep state. These are the 3 experiences which everyone undergoes in his or her day-to-day life. Normally, we take into consideration only what we experience in waking state. So, if a person lives for 90 years, and if he sleeps for 8 hours every day, if you ask him, how old are you? He doesn't say, I'm only 60 years old. But he had waking experience only for 60 years. For 30 years, he was sleeping, because every day he sleeps for 8 hours. So
dream experience and deep sleep experience are also taken into consideration. We normally talk about our time. But in practical life, we think, well, we judge, we count only what we do during waking state. Now, Vedanta asks you to analyze your own experiences during these three stages. What we experience in waking state is in some way related to what we experience in dreams. You can never have a dream experience which is completely separate, different from waking state experiences. Whatever dream you have may be directly or indirectly related to what you experience in waking state. When some people say, this book also discusses that point. In dream, perhaps you may imagine you are flying in the sky, not in a plane. Such dreams do happen to people. Now, this is impossible. So one may argue, well, dream experience is different from waking state experience. So there what happens is, the idea of flying is accumulated during waking state. Because you have seen planes flying. And your own entity. So the idea, you associate yourself with the idea of flying, and this come together and it take the form of experiencing flying in the open sky. This happens. There are differences, of course. In dream, we can reach New York from here in split second. The moment mind imagines, you reach there. In waking state, it takes 6 hours. So there could be, again, you go to sleep here and you feel you are reached London or some other place thousands of miles away. So there is difference with regard to place, time, and so on. All these differences are there. But these are relative differences, secondary differences. Fundamentally, no one can have any kind of dream which is completely divorced or separate and different from his waking state experiences. He must have imagined something, thought over something, read something about it, and these impressions somehow come to the mental surface and you have dream. But in deep sleep, you don't have any experience. And deep sleep is completely. So sometimes, some objectors belonging to Mimamsa and ritualistic school and subjective idealists, that means Vijnanavadins, that one of the idealistic school of later Buddhism, they raise the objection that in Sushupti state, in deep sleep state, it is a kind of your Advaita. They will ask this question. Advaitic experience tells you that in Advaitic state, you don't have duality. You don't experience any objects. You experience your own reality. So, in Sushupti, or what you call in deep sleep, dreamless sleep, you don't have duality, no plurality. So, what difference is there between your so-called samadhi and deep sleep? Now, Advaitins are the answer. They say, in deep sleep, you do not transcend what we call technically avidya. Your ability to see objects, to experience objects, is nullified, neutralized. Your senses do not function. In dream, your senses do function. See, in dream, you may be dreaming, walking in the open street under blazing sun. You are actually sleeping in a pitch dark room, in a small room. You may feel there's a truck nearby. So in a small room, there cannot be truck, and your eyes are closed. It's pitch darkness everywhere. Still, you may see the blazing sun above you in dream. What happens is, mind itself projects these experiences. Walking in the street, traveling in truck. All these experiences that you had during waking state are re-experienced, relived in dream. That's what happens. So that's why dream experiences are always related to waking state experiences. Though they are different, but they are also related. But in deep sleep, nothing happens. So many people, the Indian materialists like Charvakas and modern thinkers, the Berkeley and others, they ask the question, well, in deep sleep, you don't experience anything. So deep sleep is some kind of Advaita. Advaitins say no. In deep sleep, you don't transcend plurality. You do not go beyond duality. You are within duality. You are not able to experience duality. Going beyond duality is not Advaita. Transcending duality is Advaita. That's an important point to be remembered. Not being able to perceive something is not going beyond it. Going beyond or transcending something is entirely different from not being able to experience it. In Advaita, you go beyond. In deep sleep, you are not able to experience objects. But the fact is very clear. For an Advaitin, for a person who realizes the highest spiritual experience, the world continues to exist. But the world is interpreted in a different manner. It is correctly perceived for what it is. This world is a fleeting, relative entity. It is not absolute non-existence, but it is not absolute existence either, because it continues to change, and what is subject to change cannot be eternal, cannot be everlasting. So it is only relativity. This idea you find sometimes it is from most unexpected sources. You find this idea is repeated by Western thinkers also. The famous thinker Berkeley, the subjective idealist, he makes a statement in one of his famous books, The Principles of Human Knowledge. There he says, "What therefore becomes of the sun, the moon, and the stars?" Berkeley was a subjective idealist. In a way, his idea was very similar to the subjective idealism of Vijnanavada, Buddhist school. In fact, there is a gap of almost 19 centuries between Berkeley and the great Vijnanavadins of Buddhist tradition like Asanga, Ningnaga, Vasubandhu, and Maitreyanatha and other great Buddhist subjective idealists who lived almost 19 centuries before Berkeley. So what they said earlier, Berkeley repeats, you can find in this famous Principles of Human Knowledge. He says, "What therefore becomes of the sun, the moon, and the stars?" Berkeley comes closer to Advaita than the subjective idealist of Buddhist tradition. In the subjective idealism of Buddhist tradition, they completely rejected the reality of external objects. They thought and they believed that things exist only so long as we perceive them. That's the idea. External things have no independent existence apart from the mind that perceives them. So long as the memory, so long as the perception of external objects remain within mind, which they call chittam. They don't use the word mana, Sanskrit, and they use the word chittam, means the platform where all these impressions are gathered and accumulated. It's one chittam. So long as external objects and their memories and sensations remain within our chittam or mind stuff, external things exist. Apart from subject, the perceiver, the seer, the objects, the perceived objects have no existence. That was the view of the earlier Buddhist Vijnanavadins. In a way, they anticipated the subjective idealism of our own, the last 200 years. Now, Berkeley says, "What therefore becomes of the sun, moon, and stars? What must we think of the houses, rivers, mountains, trees, stones, nay, even of our own bodies? Are all this but so many chimeras and illusions of the fancy?" I answer that by the principles premised, we are not deprived of any of these things or understand any of these things in nature. Whatever we see, feel, hear, or any voice men conceive or understand remains as secure as ever and is as real as ever. There is a verum natura, and the distinction between realities and chimeras retain in full force. But you have to remember, what he said was, when we go beyond the external empirical experiences, they do not cease to exist. They are seen, they are perceived from a different angle. So in that sense, Berkeley comes closer to Advaita than his predecessors, subjective idealists, like Asanga, Dignaga, and others who lived in the 2nd or 3rd century AD. So what Vedantin says is that the external world does exist, but the external world is perceived for what it is. External world is as a relative entity. It comes, it goes. The earth comes into existence, may live, may continue to exist for a few billions of, maybe millions of years. And then every cycle, this existence is repeated. This emergence, existence, and dissolution are repeated. This is the Vedantic dictum. Now, the 34th verse says, a person who has reached this level of spiritual realization through proper perception and realization goes beyond the empirical. Only point is, he is not shocked by the external world. A wise man, a spiritually enlightened wise person, and an ordinary person who is not spiritually enlightened, the difference is only this: the wise man is not shocked, he is not surprised, he is not swept off his feet by the unpleasant, unexpected events, the external world. The person who is not spiritually enlightened is shocked and surprised. He is swept off his feet. That's a basic difference from empirical point of view. The spiritually enlightened person can look upon all this and still remain without being shocked, without being surprised. He can look at the whole thing. With a smile, he can look at this world and face the realities of life. But those who are not enlightened, those who think the world is the only entity, will believe money is the only thing to be had. So if there is no money, if money is lost, he is shocked. Status is the only thing to be achieved, if status is not gained, he is shocked. So whatever he is trying to achieve, for that he or she works hard, and if it is not achieved, then that unpleasant experience will be a shocking experience to that particular person, not for a spiritually enlightened person. That's a basic difference. So that's why it is stated here. So this 34th verse says, a spiritually enlightened person, his mind is completely under control. He has reached wisdom. That's the idea behind. Now 35th verse. Liyate hi susuptetan nigrihidam na liyate tadeva nirbhayam brahma jnanalokam samantatah. This is the verse. Here again this idea is repeated. What happens in deep sleep and what happens in samadhi, or what is called, according to yoga tradition, is called niruddhavastha. It means yogas chitta vritti nirodha, means when mind tendencies and vibrations are completely controlled, that state is called yoga according to Patanjali's yoga tradition. And it's called samadhi in the yoga tradition and also in Vedantic tradition. And so here this 35th verse makes a clear distinction between our experience in deep sleep and our experience in enlightened samadhi. We can say deep sleep is experience of the absence of duality without our being aware of it. Samadhi is the experience of the absence of duality with full awareness. That's the basic difference. Let's see. So the mind becomes completely dissolved in deep sleep. That idea is repeated here. Liyate ki sushupte. Sushupte means in deep sleep. Mind is completely dissolved. This everyone understands. In fact, some Vedantic books make interesting comparison between deep sleep, sushupti and samadhi. In the Brihadaranyaka and Mandukya Upanishads, you can see interesting comparisons. Sometimes, you'll be surprised. Everyone will be shocked if he or she cannot experience sleep. If you ask any old person, and if he or she doesn't get enough sleep, it will be a terrible experience. So, people take sleeping pills. Why is sleep so very important? Why can't you sit quiet somewhere? Why do we need a state of mental condition in which there are no thoughts? There is no perception of external objects. The reason is that's the only state in which we get complete rest. So long as we continue seeing external objects, we will experience happiness or unhappiness. So long as there is the distinction between object and subject, we are the subjects and external objects are perceived by us. So long as this experience continues, there will be misery, happiness, unhappiness, anxiety, and so on. The moment we transcend this subject-object division, we get rest. So in deep sleep, we get complete rest. Now, so many Vedantic thinkers, great sages, they have made interesting comparisons between this state and the highest spiritual experience of samadhi. There is a similarity, in fact, between sushupti and samadhi, as I said earlier. In sushupti, we are not able to experience duality and plurality. Not because we transcend them, but because the tools with which we experience duality and plurality or external objects are nullified. Mind gets completely immersed in Mula Vidya, the original ignorance. That's Advaitic interpretation. Mind is completely immersed in Mula Vidya. Total ignorance. So sometimes, Sushupti is compared to what we see from a distance. Suppose you are standing on the bank of a river. If you look at the external objects at a distance, Shankaracharya makes an interesting description of this. In the Bhashya, I dealt with this earlier. Now, when there is sunlight, you can see people moving, vehicles moving, buildings and so on. But when the sun is set in the west, there is pitch darkness. You can see only a total darkness. One entity which is clothed in darkness. This is compared to deep sleep. You are not going beyond, you are not transcending these external objects, the plurality. Your eyes cannot visualize the distinction between different moving objects on the other bank of the river because of total pitch darkness. You don't transcend duality. Duality is not perceived by you because of darkness. Now, this is what happens in Sushupti. But it gives you an idea of a mental condition in which there is no duality. Whenever we go beyond duality, either by not being able to perceive duality or transcending duality as in samadhi, we feel complete rest because we are one with ourselves. When there are no external objects perceived, we are one with ourselves. That's why there is a natural eagerness for complete rest in the form of deep sleep. Nobody would like to have daydreams full of nightmares. In fact, that will be much more disturbing than waking states. People will be much more exhausted if they have nightmares, mentally more disturbed. So everyone wants to go to a state of mental condition, a mental state in which he or she doesn't see anything other than himself or herself. Including herself is not aware of it. Natural eagerness to reach a state which is in which duality is not perceived, which is called susupti or deep sleep. Now, this state is accompanied, it is associated with total ignorance. You are not transcending duality. You are not able to perceive duality. Just as in pitch darkness, you are not able to see different objects moving on the other bank of the river. There is a famous portion in Shankara's commentary where he gives this very dramatic, graphic description. You are standing on one bank of the river. In daylight, you can see different objects. Suddenly, the sunset sets in. The sun vanishes. It's all pitch dark everywhere. Everything is now perceived in total darkness as one unit of incomprehensible, thick, total darkness. You are not transcending it. You are not able to see. Now, in samadhi, what happens? You don't experience duality because you go beyond that. And this is an experience with full awareness. Samadhi is the experience of going beyond duality with total awareness. And samadhi can be achieved only by preparing our mind for that experience. By practicing unselfish action, by practicing mental discipline, internal and external discipline, by training our mind to focus on spiritual ideas, by eradicating from our mind, removing from our mind all non-spiritual tendencies and impressions, we can make our mind fit for the experience of samadhi. So we become fit for that experience. So we get that experience with total awareness. That is samadhi. In susupti, you get that experience without any awareness. I often compare. Suppose you have to go to New York or London. You can go in two different ways. Somebody can knock you down and you fall unconscious, put you in a bag or something and take you to New York. 6 hours you reach there. You are gone to New York, no doubt about it. And you are brought back. That kind of going to New York is absolutely useless. It is as good as not going to New York. That's like samadhi. That's like susupti, deep sleep. You have experienced the experience going to New York, but you are not aware of it. You can't do any work. So it's of no use to you. Samadhi is like you have got a definite work to do there. So you go, you book your ticket, and then you board a plane, you go to New York, you get your work done, and then you return. Samadhi is like that. So these are two different types of experiences. There are similarities, but there are fundamental differences. Now, this is explained in this 35th verse. So, in deep sleep, the mind becomes completely dissolved. Liyatehi susupte. That's the idea. Susupte means in deep sleep. Mind is completely dissolved. Tan nigrihidam na liyate. Now what happens? When your mind is under total control, it's like going to New York with a definite purpose, with full awareness, with full consciousness for a work. So you're consciously undertaking your job. So what happens? Mind is controlled, First of all, we must practice certain spiritual disciplines. We must have a strong desire for spiritual enlightenment. And then we must have a strong determination to eradicate our mind, our lower thoughts and lower ideas, undesirable tendencies. And then we must become completely free from any kind of desire. And then we must try to achieve complete control of our senses, external and internal senses and mind, fortified by a strong desire, determination to achieve spiritual enlightenment. It's called sadhana chatushtayam. It's called nitya nitya vastu vivekaka, ihamutra phala bhoga viragaka, samadhi sukha sambuddhi mumukshutvam. These are the 4 disciplines I have already outlined in English. So if a person has a strong sense of discrimination, means discerning mind. Anybody who considers religion or spirituality as one of the many hobbies can never progress in spiritual life. So we must have our mind completely focused on spiritual life, spiritual ideas. For that, he should be able to discriminate between what is real and what is unreal. That is nitya anitya vastu viveka. A person who thinks spirituality is something that can be that also can be practiced along with many other businesses, giving equal importance to everything, cannot concentrate his or her mind in spiritual life. The spiritual life should be considered to be the main focus of our life. And then he or she should be completely free from any kind of desire, enjoyment, either in this world or in heaven. And try to practice internal and external discipline. And above all that, a strong desire for spiritual liberation. Sometimes you find people talk about, well, I have a lot of interest in spirituality, but I don't get time. It means the interest is there. There are interest in many other things, much more interest in many other things also. So such people cannot force themselves to spiritual activities. So spiritual enlightenment should become an important goal, destination in our life. It's called mumukshutvam, an intense desire for liberation. That's a literal translation. In a general way, we can say an intense desire for leading a spiritual life. That's important. That will help us to focus our mind and senses in the right direction. That will make our mind ready for this experience. Then we can have this experience with full awareness. That's why rest, even unconscious rest, gives us a lot of relief. That's why everyone will complain if he or she doesn't get enough sleep. Now, the real rest comes when we attain the highest spiritual illumination, which is called samadhi. That's why niruddha means when mind is completely controlled with full awareness, we experience what you experience in sushupti or deep sleep. With full awareness, then it becomes samadhi. Tadeva nirbhayam brahma jnana alokam samantata. That mind, it's Brahman, it is supreme Atman consciousness itself. And that makes us fearless. That gives us freedom from all kinds of bondage and fear. This is the idea behind. So now we'll continue in the next week. Om Shanti.